Hello everyone, it's Grandmaster Max Lingworth here. Now, what is your favourite game between Capablanca against Alicante? Well, to be honest, I have a lot of favourites, but this one I want to show you is a really instructive one for seeing how to play in a symmetrical position and use the imbalances to our advantage. So, at this point in the World Championship match, Alicante was only ahead of Capablanca by 1 point. However, with this win, he was able to increase his lead to 2 points and eventually win the world title. So we had a classical Queen's Gambit declined, which was actually the opening in most of the games from this World Championship match, where often in World Championships you'll have this kind of theoretical discussion where the players will sort of play the same openings and test each other there. So Alicante played knight bd7 and only then bishop to e7, had knight f3, and it basically tested this position in quite a lot of games. And after white's rook c1, so you'll notice that both sides are kind of waiting with this sort of tension battle, where black isn't taking on c4 immediately, because then the bishop on c4 would develop in one go. But white is also not rushing to play a move like bishop d3, as then black would take on c4, and it would take a second move for white to bring his bishop to c4, as it were. So after rook c1, black played this move of a6. Nowadays you're more likely to see black play a move such as c6, for example, and play a more semi-Slav kind of structure. Probably what white should do here after a6 is to take, and so I make the case that in the exchange QGD that black might not necessarily want to play a6 as opposed to c6 here. I guess it's still a very much playable position for both sides from this point, where black will sort of make the argument that rook c1 is not really more useful than a6 in that sense, where you often see the rook go to b1 in this line to support our minority attack. So in the game, white played the move a3, and he's sort of, I guess, waiting still for black to take on c4. But after h6 and bishop h4, black decided it was actually time to go for the Moran plan, as it's known from the semi-Slav, which is where you take on c4, and okay, it is true that the bishop got to c4 in one turn. At the same time, white's moves like a3 and rook c1 were perhaps not his most useful given the choice. And I guess one way to make use of a3 would be to put the bishop on a2, although it would, I guess, be not so different to the game, which saw white play bishop to e2, I had bishop b7, and my idea of black's move order is that if b4, that black has a nice way to undermine the structure all the same. So do you see the move that black should play to get a reasonable game? So well done if you found the idea a5. It's a nice way to put the b pawn under some pressure and kind of balance the game in this way, where if white does defend the pawn, then black can sort of take, and you even play a move like c6 if he needs to defend the b5 pawn before attacking the b4 pawn. Instead we had white play castles and let black get in this c5. Now if you play the Queen's Gambit declined or the Moran system as black, or semi-Slav to be precise, then it's quite likely that you'll get this sort of pawn structure where basically it's more or less symmetrical in terms of pawn structure, certainly after what happened in the game. Probably white should play the immediate b4 and just kick that knight away. But instead white played knight d4 first and then played b4 after this. And in this position it might initially seem that it's still just an equal position where not a lot is happening. But there's a specific weak square in white's position which, well, if you've been paying attention to the video, you'll have already seen that the weakness in white's position is c4, and it sort of comes down to the knights where white can't easily bring a knight to c5, sort of the inverse idea, because black's covering with a lot of pieces, but white is only really covering that e2 square with the bishop as such. In fact, in this position, this was probably the time for white to try some move like bishop f3 and try to exchange some pieces and fight for the initiative. Instead, white played bishop g3. Okay, it stops knight to e5, but what might be a good move for black instead. So well done if you spotted Alekhine move of knight to b6. It's true you could also put the queen on b6 and develop that way, but I like knight b6 because it brings our knight closer to the c4 square, which after all is an outpost for our knight. And we can sort of feel that even with its bishop that black has a little bit of piece pressure in what's otherwise a close to equal position. Probably what white had to do here was play knight b3 and sort of try to get his knight to a5 to at least get some sort of play, and also cover the c4 square from invasion. Instead, white played queen to b3, and I really like the move that Alekhine played here. This is another one that you might like to pause and set as a puzzle. So, well done if you found Alekhine's move of knight f to d5. I find this often works really well when the queen's on b3, because it means that if they take, you can gain a tempo on the queen with bishop takes d5. If you want to play knight c4 instead, I find that doesn't work quite as well, because they could go rook d1 and they can try to undermine our pawn structure with a4 if we put a knight on c4 too soon. So that's what I like about Alekhine's knight d5, that it just keeps the piece pressure up. And after bishop f3, well, now the c4 square has been left behind, and black chose to occupy it with the rook rather than the knight, so that he can keep a good grip over the d5 square, which white is going to try and pressure with his pieces in some way. So white played knight to e4, and a theme we've kind of seen with this game is that often the way to get the better of a symmetrical or quiet sort of position is to kind of prompt some unfavourable exchanges from the opponent and to make take advantage of the piece tension and use it in our favour. So a good example of that would be that black doesn't really want to take on c1 because that would just help white's rook get to the c file for free. But what black did instead was he played the move queen c8. And the point is that now the rook is under attack, and probably white shouldn't give up the file so easily. I think queen b1 was the way to, I guess, reduce the damage in this position. Instead he played rook takes c4, but this exchange is quite a concession after knight c4, as now the knight has got to a better square with tempo. And with knight d2 being a threat, it's quite clear that black has the initiative here. So white played rook to c1, and here black played this move of queen a8, which it always looks nice to create this sort of battery along this long diagonal. Although admittedly queen d7 might have been a little more precise, just to keep the queen on a more central location for the coming battle. But we had queen a8 in the game, and this was probably the point where white could have defended it quite a bit better. Black's idea is he wants to go knight e3 and discover an attack on the e4 knight with the queen and bishop battery. So how do you think white should deal with this here? Can you improve on Capablanca's play here as white? So in the game, Capablanca played knight c3, which we'll get to in a moment. I think the move white had to play to keep the struggle going was knight c5. It's simply a much more active move, and especially when your opponent has the initiative, it's really important to look for some way to make some counter-attack or to change a position. And the idea is that now after bishop takes, I think Capablanca might have been concerned about the weak c5 pawn after rook c8. But white does have a way to sort of keep the balance. What he can do is he can either play bishop e2. Yeah, I think bishop e2 would be the best move, just to take that piece back on c4 and try to balance the game in this way. Instead of this, white played knight c3, And the problem with that is that, well, when white does trade the pieces with knight d5 to get out of the knight d2 fork, then it just so helps black get to a better piece placement with each recapture. And I find this actually is often a way that you'll see, let's say, a stronger player outplay their opponent, where they'll just kind of pressure them with the pieces to kind of prompt the opponent to go for exchanges that benefit them. Where we can see here how each piece got to a more active square with each recapture. So white played the move a4 in the game, trying to sort of challenge this b5 square, the b5 pawn that's anchoring the knight. And white could also play a move like f3 and try and bring his bishop back. But f3 does admittedly weaken the white king a little bit, so it's not an ideal move either. After white's a4, well, white's not really threatening anything, and you could say there's only one piece of black's that's not really doing that much. Okay, I guess the king on j is also not doing a lot, but it is the middle game after all. So black played bishop f6, just keeping up the threats, and I mean, for this one I don't think Alekhine really puts a foot wrong, where white played the move knight to f3 in this position, getting out of the attack. And now black found a really nice idea, actually, where this is a really nice move that black played. Can you see Alekhine's move from this position? So in a game, Alekhine played bishop b2 to attack the rook. In fairness, a simple move like rook d8 and invading with the queen probably also gives black a extremely strong position. Because I mean, the white pieces are not really serving any active function here. But bishop b2 is quite well calculated in that all the different rook moves kind of have a problem for white. He played rook to e1 in the game. The first point is that you can't play rook takes c4, because if you do, then there will be a back rank mate after queen b2 and queen d1 as such. So rook c4 is clearly out of the question. If they play rook to d1 instead, then black can transition into a very nice endgame, where you can either play b takes a4, or even more fancy, you can actually play knight takes e3. And after rook takes d5, then rook to c1, and it's a very nice combination. Again, using white's weak back rank. In this position, black would be up a pawn, and I think that the extra pawn would most likely be sufficient to win in a position like this one. Black's plan could just be to bring the king up, and from there just place his pieces to attack the weak pawn on b4, which after all is fixed on a dark square, which I think only favours black here. And finally, if white plays rook b1, okay, this one you might like to pause and see if you can find Alekhine's amazing tactical blow. So what Alekhine intended here was to play the move knight to a3, where yes, you are giving up the two minor pieces for a rook, but after queen takes b2 and takes, again black can use the weak back rank to his advantage, where if only the queen was away from b1, then we would have a mate. And that's the idea of black's move queen to b3, which is just a absolutely killing idea. And the problem is that white's minor pieces are just not in any real position to stop the charge of the a pawn, and this would be, I believe, a technically winning position for black based on my analysis. So after looking at all these nice alternatives, we finally get to the game where white played rook to e1. Black took the d file with rook to d8. And after a takes b5, a takes b5, and h3, it was at this point that Alekhine realised that all his pieces are already on very active squares here. And sure, you could play queen d3 and probably have a close to winning position, with the idea that after takes that you can sort of get the rook around and kind of gang up on and win the b pawn from there. But Alekhine was one of these players who tended to like to go for the dynamic attacking option, and to do that he used the move e5 as a kind of battering ram to go after the knight. So after rook to b1, so if e4, you can still play the queen d3 idea that we saw just beforehand. After white's rook b1 and e4, probably white had to move the knight away, although I think already this position would be technically winning for black, just from the fact that so after knight e1 and queen d2, then white's pieces are just completely dominated. And this is one position I think you would quite enjoy playing out against the computer to see if you can convert black's advantage yourself. At least if not, you'll certainly learn how to do so from the analysis. So instead of knight e1 or knight to h2, white played knight d4. I think he believed after bishop takes d4 that he didn't just have to go down a pawn with e d4 and queen d4, but that he could play rook d1 and regain the piece this way. However, this does run into a clear refutation. So do you see the tactic that Alekhine played to secure the victory? So well done if you found black's key move of knight takes e3. In fact, white resigned after this move, where because the queen is under attack, white has to play queen d5. But then after rook d5, white simply loses a piece, as after f takes e3, there would be bishop b3 with a check, and black would simply take the rook and win the game from there. So thank you very much for watching this video. What's something that you learned from this game that you want to apply yourself? So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and please like and subscribe to my content if you are really enjoying it. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.